aside from Vietnam, you really are in basic agreement with the general foreign policy objectives of this administration. Are you, Senator McCarthy?
It depends on what their objectives are. I'm not quite sure what their objectives in Europe are, for example. I don't think things were handled well there, that we could have dealt in somewhat better terms with France to a point where at least the naval control and communication lines might not have been taken out, and the additional expense of transferring all of that could have been avoided. I don't think we acted properly in the Dominican intervention. We completely ignored the Organization of American States and picked it up kind of as a residual support of our action, but largely really ignoring the OAS and what we've committed ourselves to in that. And I think that through the years we've not really used the United Nations as we should have. This is not the policy question, but using the ambassador pretty much as a simple agent of the administration instead of insisting that he represent us really in terms also of the United Nations Charter. Generally, we've acted as though the UN had applications to countries in the Eastern Hemisphere, not to the Western Hemisphere, and really had nothing to do not much to do with problems in which the United States was involved. So these are all questions of foreign policy, on which I disagree. They're not as serious, I suppose, at least with practical consequences as Vietnam, but these are points of disagreement.
Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I was a member of the National Security Council for 3.5 years, and was involved in some of those matters during that period of time in connection with Latin America and in connection with Africa, with the Test Ban Treaty, and I suppose the most critical crisis that's ever been faced by mankind, the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of 1962. I don't think that we can ignore the rest of the world. I don't think we can act as if it doesn't exist and separate ourselves from the rest of the world. We have to be obviously interested and concerned about what occurs elsewhere. But what I think, and we have to make it clear, and which we did, I think, during the early 1960s, was that we can't be the nation's policeman. We cannot settle every struggle or every problem that exists everywhere, all over the globe, and the internal struggle that goes on between one power group versus another power group within, whether it's Latin America or whether it's in Asia. On the other hand, we can't ignore what happens. For instance, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the missiles coming into Cuba. But if the same kind of arrangement was made in another Latin American country, that threatens our national security. We not only have, therefore, some national responsibility and possibly a moral responsibility in some ways, but we also have arrangements that meeting our national security needs is vital and terribly important for the next generation of Americans, because we now have the weapons that can destroy all of mankind.
Senator Kennedy.